honestly have a really cool topic and really cool discussion though today with a topic that I think is kind of a buzzword for a lot of people using AI doing workflows and um, get to have my dad Chris join us today, which is super nice. And this is kind of what he does. So if you want to introduce a little bit about yourself and what you do, your company.
Sure. So Chris Bowman, and I work for Title Financial Corporation, which is the holding company for, you may see Flying S Title and escrow companies that are around the area. I work in the IT department and been doing a lot of database work for 25 years or so. Been involved in some kind of scripting or coding for probably 30 years or in that ballpark. And so my expertise at the company is I do a lot of database work and automation to help with the processes at our company.
A lot
So,
of integrations and stuff like that,
yeah,
right?
yes.
Sweet. So, um, I think it's perfect to have you on here talking about this because it's right up your alley as far as some of the things that you do, probably on a more basic level for sure. But if you were to explain an AI powered workflow to somebody who's not, technology savvy or been in the business for 25 years, 30 years, how would you explain what you do?
Yeah. So basically, it's some kind of business process or a portion of a business process that you can automate so you don't have to do a lot of the manual tasks. It does those for you in the background to get some kind of result.
Okay.
So on a very basic level.
And so with that automation, how does a regular automation versus an AI powered automation differ?
So regular automation, you're going to input all of the parameters and the specifics. So you're basically going to code everything and the outcomes. Where an AI automation, you can turn pieces of that typically over to AI to do some of the reasoning behind it.
Can you kind of give an example of something like that, um, whether it's email or
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah, absolutely. So, in fact, I can give you a basic example out of things that we're doing at our office. So we have one process that we do where uh, we have customers, or actually vendors, that we do business with. They'll send us an invoice, and our accounting department set it up so that goes to a specific email address. And then we have an automation that grabs those emails, and there's an AI piece of that that will process the emails. So it will look for specific information in the email to put into the accounting system, along with typically they'll have an attachment, an invoice attachment, and it will look for specific information in there, add that to what they need in the accounting system, and then store the image also in a specific place.
Okay.
So,
I take it you had probably some kind of an automation in there prior to that, doing something like that, and you were adding AI pieces to to make
a-
it easier, or
actually, a lot of that before was a manual process, and so when we looked at automating it, they had that process in place physically, and then we looked at what we could do internally, and also what third party vendors could do to help us out with that. And we actually, in that case, went with a third party vendor for a good chunk of that process because they had already nailed down exactly how to pull some of that information in. So then we didn't have to redo it and make it from scratch.
that's super nice.
Yeah.
um, for a company that's looking to do automations like that, do they need a large IT team, in-house IT team, or a significant budget to make something like that work?
So that depends
Probably,
on what
probably
you're.
on that side, you're probably looking at something like that. But
Yeah.
like maybe
Yes.
something more simple, I guess.
Right.
Like, do you need somebody to do it for like emails? Like, obviously, if you're having over or different employees, it might be easier to have somebody who's dedicated to something like that
Right.
versus, the small medium business. So,
Yeah, and it depends on the process. So the one that I was just talking about, there could be a smaller company that can implement that because a lot of that was looking for vendors that could do what we wanted to have done instead of having to take the time to do it in-house. So it's basically finding somebody who already has a software or process that fits with whatever accounting software you had. In our case, we're using Microsoft Business Central. And so we looked for Business Central vendors that could help us handle that. So you wouldn't have to have necessarily a big IT department or maybe even an ID department at all to do some implementations like that. You do get into some costs,
Yeah, 'cause
obviously.
you had somebody else that already had something built essentially, and you're
Right.
just working with them, right? So you've got options there.
Right. But yeah, you're going to be looking at cost because it's a product that they're selling
Mhm.
and you're working with. But also you can do some basic things with AI automation. So even adding Gemini to if you have a Google Workspace account, or adding Copilot if you have Microsoft 365. So those are some things you can do to work on automation. And if you're willing to put in some time and maybe some sweat equity, or if you have somebody who has some technical talent, you can have even just a basic user account on some of these things and do some automation.
Hmm.
So
So I mean,
this depends.
yeah, yeah.
and how complex you need to get or want to get.
What are you looking at doing for sure?
Right.
I guess so. With your process that you just automated, how did you guys figure out, or what led you to, yeah, we should automate that process? Um, I mean, I'm sure you weren't just looking it up in Chat GPT. Hey, what part of my business should I automate? I'm sure
Right.
you guys are looking at the business and going, somebody's looking at it going, hey, can we automate something like this and go and bring it to you guys to make that happen? So I guess, how did that process work?
Yeah. So most of what we've done so far has been looking at some of the more time consuming areas. And very repetitive areas. So
Mm.
things that we could very much define and say, we know this process from beginning to end. It starts here, and these are the steps you do, and it ends up here. So since we knew that very well, and it also took a lot of time, and it was very repetitive, we looked at some of those processes up front.
Mm.
So save some cost, save some time, make it as efficient as we could.
Mainly on your guys' back end, right? I mean, I'm sure there's what other kind of things have you automated for, customers interaction, or maybe some stuff that frequently happens, to ease up and take. I mean, obviously you did this one for taking up something that was manually done.
Mm-hmm.
It relieves time from that person. You're now able to use them in a different spot. So
Yeah.
I guess, what are some things that you've done for a customer side, or you've seen as far as the customer side goes?
Yeah, so on the customer side, we've done some automation of information back to them. Um, so, like when orders come in,
Mhm.
we do have some processes that will automatically interact with them to say, "Hey, we received your order. Here's where we are in the process," so that they know what's happening
Mhm.
and they're informed. And then we always follow that up. And this is something that's been important to our company is we always follow that up with a personal touch.
Mhm.
So there'll always be yes, they get the email, but we have somebody physically calling them and saying, hey, this is where we are with the process. This is what's happening. We want to touch base with you and personally thank you for being involved in our company.
Mm.
So we have some of that. And we're just actually recently, now that you asked that question, are putting some things in place where through apps, we have apps that customers can now use to interact with us, either to give us order information or to even pull their client in on some interactions with an order.
Mm.
So we've started doing some of those things as well, so that people feel more involved with what's going on and staying up to date on how the process is moving through on their particular order.
So you found that uh, your clients, your customers are more satisfied with something like that because they're getting more information, staying further up to date.
Yeah, before that, in our office, it's typically, or in our business, it's typically um, the end customer is kind of out of the process because we're working a lot with banks and with real estate agents. And then the ultimate customer is the person who is buying a house or refinancing a loan or something like that. So they're kind of feeling out of touch because they'll get an update once in a while, or they'll get a call that says, you just need to come to this place at this time.
Yeah, get everything finished up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And now they can get some information like, hey, we've received the order. Hey, we finished doing a search on the order. So now our next step is we're going to do this piece. And so they feel like, hey, I'm involved in this and I know what's going on. So I don't just get a call out of the blue that says show up and sign some papers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It seems kind of sketchy,
Yeah.
Hey, come sign your life away,
Yes.
stamps and stuff. So,
Right.
perfect. What are some examples of like email related workflows that have suited well for you? Yeah, well, actually, you kind of given already some good AI stuff for emails, but it sounds like with those email flows, you're not really replacing your people at work. You're giving them more of an opportunity to touch base with customers and clients because they don't have so much work that they have to do or so much busy work they have to do.
Right.
They can actually be customer facing now, right?
Yes, that's part of it. Definitely is to give them more opportunity. Plus, we're in our business, and I'm sure other businesses are having the same issue of we're finding a smaller talent pool.
Mm.
So in the past, there may have been more people you could go out and get that would be wanting and willing to work in the title industry, and now we're having trouble finding people. And so we're needing to be more efficient with the group that we have. Plus, with younger people, it seems to resonate with them also to say, hey, we're doing more technology oriented things. So as they get involved, it's a cool thing to get involved with rather than just I'm pushing paper around.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. As far as that workflow goes, can you describe the basic building blocks of an automated workflow?
sure. So basically, you're going to look for some kind of trigger point or starting point. So something that you can define as, hey, this starts our process. And then through that process, typically the next step is you're going to be gathering some kind of information and then processing that information and then having some kind of output. And you may iterate through or go through that several times before you get to a final end. So you may have a trigger, you grab some things, you do some processing that may initiate another trigger because of what you gather. And so it may do that a few times before you finally end up with your final process.
Sounds like you must be pretty good at science then too, because you have a if then statement, right? If this is happening, then do this, right?
There's a lot of decision trees. Yeah.
Love that.
For sure.
How important is it to have those clear rules before introducing AI into that workflow?
Yeah, in our experience, it's been really important to do that, especially to have something work out well. Sometimes we think that computers generally, you kind of go, well, they'll just solve my problem, and that's not the case. There's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out, and that's true on anything. So, including AI. AI can give you an answer, and if you understand the basics of what AI is and what it's designed to do. So really AI is built to look at associations and understand associations and the strength of those associations between different things. So if you say, hey, go do this process, and it wants to give you an answer, but it doesn't have all the information, it can make up an answer. And that's where you
get hallucinations.
Yeah,
you get kind of talking about that last night. Yeah,
you get the term hallucinations because it wants to give you an answer, but it only has so much information. So it's like, well, it's like us as a human. We're like, well, we want to make sense of something. We know these different data points. We want to make sense of it. So we can come to this conclusion, even though it may be totally wrong and not even exist. So that's what AI does as well. So if you understand that's what it needs to do, you've got to give it some good information, good solid information, so you can get good solid answers out of it.
What information, should the workflow capture from an incoming email?
That would depend on the process. So like the invoice system that we put in place, it's going to gather the invoice number. It's going to get the company that it came from, their email address. More than likely, they're going to have a phone number that's associated with it. You'll have an amount of maybe totally for the invoice and line items on the invoice that you want to capture. So that would be an example in that case. If it's maybe a sales side, then of course you want to grab the email that it came from, names, addresses, phone number if it exists, and subjects. What are we asking about? What are they interested in? So just kind of evaluation of what am I trying to gather and what's the purpose? It's really, I kind of touched on it before, but it's really good to have a definition, a clear definition of what is my process and what is my end goal. Because part of that too is, how do you know you're going to be making a workflow that is efficient and accomplishes what you need it to? Is it making us more efficient? Well, if we had a manual process before, we knew it took us this long for this many things that we processed, you want to be able to say, well, now it's taking us this long for this many things that we've processed, and it's costing us this much versus before it was this many man hours or whatever it was.
You definitely want to make sure you're getting a good ROI, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to process it the way you are.
Yes.
Yeah. It sounds like there's also some categorizing that's going on in there. If you, let's say your business is expanding and growing and you start getting a new category, how is AI how can you set up your workflow to have AI or just your workflow in general handle those new categories? And so that way you can say, oh, I'm getting something different here now, and recategorize.
So how can you do it? Or sorry, is that the question?
Yeah. Or
how can you find out?
Yeah. How can you find? Let's do that. Let's go with can you find out? Because I'm sure later on you'll show us how we can do it.
Yeah.
But right now, I just yeah.
And that's where if you have a good baseline, and that's knowing at least your information up front, that's very helpful, because then either you or you can use AI to help look for those anomalies, because it, like I said, it knows the association, so it can say, hey, I know this is an outlier. Well, now we can go dig into, well, what is it and what makes that up and what do we need to do with it? So you can have it help you with that kind of analysis.
In your experience, when should an email be automatically answered, and then and when should it be reviewed by an employee?
So especially if you're just starting into any kind of automation or AI, it's always good to review it. I know Google has an example with Gemini, Microsoft with Copilot. They, through the AI itself, they don't allow it to auto reply. They'll allow it to create a draft that you have to review or hit the send button, whether you choose to review it or not. But they require that just because that's a safety measure. And
they don't want to get sued.
They don't want to get in trouble, right? So if you want to get around that, you actually have to create a workflow where you say, yeah, go ahead and create the draft. And now I'm going to say I'm confident enough that I will automate the send.
Okay.
So, or you can actually, through the workflow, you can create the email,
draft itself,
the draft itself and the send. Right. So it's always good, especially to start, to make sure you're reviewing it so that you know what's going out. Just, you don't want them having unhappy people, customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to review that at start, and then as you get more comfortable, there's definitely things like, in our case, we would say, to tell the customer we've received the order or we're at this point in the process. that's pretty easy to say, yeah, just go ahead and send that. That's not a problem. That shouldn't make anybody upset.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about maybe a problem resolution, I mean, you can auto send some things out of, hey, look at these options and we'll get with you shortly. But to say, oh, this is the answer, you probably don't want to do that because that can frustrate people. So you just want to keep it at a point where you say, something that I'm very confident with, maybe I can auto send. Everything else, I probably want to have a review on that.
Yeah, definitely want to make sure that there's no hallucinations in there because
Right?
you want to give an answer. So, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. Kind of switching gears, but what kind of opportunities, especially here locally, for businesses, have you seen? I guess using AI, what kind of relevant? Gosh, yeah,
Opportunities.
Yeah, what kind of opportunities are relevant for local business owners? That's how I should really phrase that question.
That was good. So email is a big one, and email flows would be an easy way to start. And sorry, that was your question, right? Was on the email side?
Well, no, just like in general, what kind of opportunities are
Okay,
there
in
as far
general.
as somebody? I mean, maybe in steps. Somebody just starting out, somebody who's got small business, and somebody who's got a medium-sized business.
Okay, yeah. So emails a pretty easy one to start with, especially just some basic either responses or forwards to try and keep things moving along, keep it as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
So you may have a ticket come in or an email come in. I say ticket because I'm on the emails or on the IT side.
No, that's what we get to, so I can relate to that. Yeah.
So you have a ticket come in. You may have something go out automatically that says, "Hey, we received your ticket. We're working on it."
Yeah.
You could also have in that process some evaluation of that email to say, okay, what group does this need to go to so that we can try and move it forward in the process as quickly as possible? Because we have different departments in IT where we'll say, okay, this is one that's a customer facing issue. This is one that's a back end system admin kind of an issue. This is so you can have it then say, oh, well, let's look at this email based on the content. It looks like it needs to go to this group instead of having somebody manually look at it, read it, and then say, oh, yeah, this is the group it needs to go to. So initially, you may want to have that oversight to say,
make
hey,
sure things are going in the right place.
Yeah, this is the category it thinks it should go. Does that look right? Yes, go ahead and send it. And then as that gets refined, then you can have those auto send, and you may have some, especially on a back end process. If it goes to the wrong group, that's pretty easy to say, oh, now we've read it. We're going to send this to the right group. That's not going to be a big problem. So, and you'll get a bunch of them that you do take care of, and they're moved along in the process. So those are some things. Accounting was an easy one for us because there's already vendors and programs and processes that you can purchase a subscription for. So that would be another one that you can definitely take advantage of pretty quickly.
So with that automation, then how can companies respond quickly without making communication feel impersonal? You kind of touched on it earlier with having the response back, but also having somebody touch on it as well.
Yeah, so we have that as a culture in our company generally. So I mentioned we do that with our outside customers, but we do that with our inside customers as well. So if we have a ticket come into IT, it gets pushed to wherever it needs to go, and the internal customer gets a response. But we have it as a goal that within 5 minutes, roughly, that we actually have somebody who has made a call to that person also to say, hey, we have your ticket, we're looking at it right now. So or maybe even have a resolution at that point.
Yeah, how important has that been in your guys' company and in your you also doing that process?
That's been huge. So we get a lot of people that like our IT department. We have good relationships with all of our people in our offices. We actually had an employee that was hired several months ago, and they came from they'd worked in some bigger companies for a while, and they said, I am just amazed at how well liked your IT department is, because usually it's like, oh, IT, yeah, we got to deal with IT. And we don't get a lot of that because we try and make it as personal as possible, and to have a human to human touch instead of just, oh, you send in a ticket, you're going to get a ticket back that says, yeah, we got this taken care of.
Do you feel like that's been helpful also for like also evaluating what's going on inside the ticket as well, where AI can look at a ticket and kind of give you an idea as to what's going on, but having that personal touch is always nice to see what's actually going on, because sometimes it's hard to decipher, how big of an issue it is just over an email.
It is. And that's huge, because I'm sure you've had this experience, whether it's IT or on the customer side. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
So they may be saying, well, this is the problem, or I need this fixed. And then when you talk to them, you go, oh yeah, that's not it at all. It's actually over here. This is what we're dealing with. So
yeah,
that's been huge to take care of the problem and also let them know what's going on, and give them a little bit of education along the way to say, oh, this is what you said, but now that we're looking at this, you can see these things that are happening. So that tells us that this is what's going on. So,
yeah, some of the lingo and stuff that people think might be right,
yes.
is not actually what is correct in IT. I've had this encounter as well. As I go to an IT guy and I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do, and they're like, well, I can't make that happen. It's like, okay, well, why not? And then you finally get down to the bottom of it. It's like, oh, actually, I meant something different. So, I mean, yeah definitely important having. I like that you guys still have that touch of reaching out to people and understanding what the problem actually is, not just letting AI kind of run your guys' business.
Yeah.
So, what are the differences between implementing automation in a professional, business or contracting, healthcare, all these different businesses? What are some different automations?
So there's definitely some considerations depending on what you're doing, and even parts of the business. So like in our business, we have some PII, and I know different people call it different things, but personal information, private information. So those kinds of things, we are very careful about what AI processes, just because you can get that data then into the language model. And most companies, probably, especially private information, you don't want to have that. So I know there are options out there where you can put guardrails on it, or even create your own AI with the guardrails on it. And we're pursuing a lot of those things right now so that we can delve into some of those areas. We have some limited things that we've done so far, but yeah, you want to be careful about passing or that information on the AI, or having it process that information. So for right now, especially what we're doing is we may have that private information in a workflow, but it's in a piece of the workflow that we have control over, the processing of that piece. And then we may have something else that AI evaluates based on pieces of it, but not the private pieces. So
it's still,
so we're
need
keeping
to
that.
know information, right? So,
Yes.
because I mean, last thing you want is somebody to prompt an AI and say, "Hey, what did Sally make?" Because she's my peer, and
Right.
oh, she made 10 grand more than I did. Well, that's an issue. Or
Right.
what did my CEO make?
Right. Or hey, we have this large customer, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that customer. And
exactly.
like, yeah, you shouldn't have access to that.
Yeah. What's Sally's social security code?
Or even worse, if you have that out there and you don't handle it properly, somebody that's just randomly out there using Copilot asks a question, and that information that is supposed to be proprietary to you shows up because the AI model went, oh yeah, I have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
So
because you fed it the information, so
because you fed it the
there's
information.
definitely some data and security, risk there for sure, and it's kind of what we're going to talk about next. And you talked about what they should be avoiding to put into a workflow. How should companies evaluate the security and privacy of technology providers?
Well, so ask them questions and get to know what their level of commitment is to that privacy. So one of the things that I would say just right off the bat is you want to make sure that they say that they will not absolutely not use any of your data for training the large language model. So that should just be your data for your company. So you want to have those kinds of walls in place, and then ask them questions along that line. So how can we secure that? What steps do you have in place so we make sure that that data isn't leaking out, or even internally, how can we make sure that the executives or the owner has access to the information, but other parts of the company don't?
Have you encountered any kind of instance where you have AI, and maybe this is I don't know, a little bit of a stretch, but that you have AI working on a certain part of the workflow, and then it's not working on any of the other workflow because that is private information? Or
Yes. Yeah. So you can have it do some evaluation. So for instance, on a ticket that's coming in for IT as an example, so we can have that evaluate and say a few things. So one being, what's the gist of the problem? Is this a desktop problem? Is this a data problem? Is this related to this specific application? So it can evaluate that, but also it can evaluate tone. So is this an urgent problem? Is this not so much an urgent problem? Are they panicked? Those kinds of things to say, well, who do I need to send it to? And how much of a priority do I need to put on this?
Do you have any part of AI actually redacting stuff for you?
We don't at this point.
Do you think at any point it would be it will get to that point where you can do something like that as far as security measures go, or is that something that, I mean, I know your personal opinion on something like that, but
I think you want to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah.
Definitely be very careful about that. So far, if we need to redact anything like that, we've always done the script ourselves or done the process ourselves to make sure that it's private. We want to be very careful.
Absolutely. Let's see. So to measure, you talked about at one point measuring a business and making sure that they're getting a good ROI. What should they be measuring within the first 30, 60, 90 days? I mean, and should they be going as long as 90 days? I mean,
yeah, I mean, for a basic process, you wouldn't have to go that long as far as necessarily measuring it, especially if it's really straightforward. But it's still not a bad idea to evaluate that so often because you do have things that change over time. So you can let you could let a process go for years, but if you do, sometimes you revisit it and go, oh, everything's great, and we'll just let it keep going. And other times you go, oh, this is different than what we started with because variables get added that you didn't expect.
Yeah, how many people get new training as they're also going throughout their business process, or think from when they got hired on to where they're at, they probably had 3 or 4 different trainings to change how they process stuff in the business.
Right. Well, and you even look at the last 5 years, 10 years of what's happened in just business and how people do things and interact, and you change the habits you have, you change how you do things because things just evolve. So it's probably a good idea to just evaluate that on a regular basis anyway. But starting out, simple basic process, you may spend a couple of weeks on it and go through refining it, and then check back on it, after the first month, and then the second month, and then go, okay, we're comfortable with this. Now we'll do a quarterly evaluation on it just to make sure that it's still doing what we expect. Or 6 months maybe at the most, I would say. You still want to just kind of check in with it and see what's happening. But on a regular basis, and sometimes you'll have processes that I've had some that we've put in place and everything's run fine for a month, and so we've evaluated it, we've put it in place. We'll let it go for that first month, and then 2 weeks after you do that, somebody introduces a new variable that all of a sudden things go a little crazy. You're like, okay, I guess we do need to address this. So sometimes it'll rear its head. It'll come and slap you.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'd say, basic one, maybe a couple of weeks, put it in place, do an evaluation after a month, maybe 2 months, and then kind of just on a regular basis after that. If it's a more in-depth process, it may take you up to 90 days to get it implemented, get it tested out, get it rolling. And then those typically that are a little more intense, you kind of put some markers in there so that you can say, okay, I know how this is going. I've got a few processes that I get emails that are sent to me every morning, and I look them over and go, yep, this is what I expect. Mm-hmm. So I keep a daily evaluation on what's happening on some of those processes that are important, like some of the processes for accounting. Those you want to.
We don't want to be missing pennies.
No, you don't want to be missing that, and accounting will come tell you if there's a problem. So we just look at those every morning and go, yes, this is what we expect. And part of what's nice about that too is if there is a problem, I can go to accounting first and say, hey, I noticed this is what's happening, and they appreciate that versus having to come to me saying, hey, there's a problem. Mm-hmm. So there's been a few times where we have had a problem, and I've been able to say, hey, I noticed this came through. I'm looking at it right now. And they're like, oh, thank you. So
have you ever had an instance where I guess you put something in place that's been working really, really well, but then all of a sudden you're getting this flood of new data or something, and then you're getting bogged down, it's bottlenecked at this workflow now because it needs an update or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, so that will happen too. So like you said, and like I said, sometimes it'll come and smack you and say, hey, you need to pay attention to me because something's different.
Yeah. How would a company evaluate then their return on investment? I mean, obviously the one that you were doing manually, that's a pretty easy return on investment.
Yep.
Figuration. Okay, what's it costing me for the AI to do this, or my IT team to create this process? How often are they having to, maintain all that kind of stuff? But what are, if it doesn't involve somebody that's manually doing something, how could they easily calculate that ROI?
Yeah, a lot of times you can do that just on volume. You can say this was our volume before, and the time it took. This is our volume now, and the time it's taking. Some of it can get a little fuzzy because you may want to put a process in place just because you can do it. You've evaluated it. You can define it. But it's causing a lot of pressure or stress. And so if you can take that pressure and stress off of some people and let the process do it, do you put a dollar stamp on that to say, I'm making my employee feel better?
Yeah.
Maybe it's costing me a little bit more, but
you could also look at your turnover rate too, because of the stress and stuff that's going on. Okay, how much am I actually able to keep my employees now because they're not facing as much stress?
So you can get into some of those nuances, and you kind of have to justify that, look at it, and say, okay, is it worth it? Mm-hmm. Is it worth it to me? Is it making a difference to my employees and their well-being, or my customers and their well-being? So maybe I am paying a little bit more, but it's helping them. And you can also look at, well, I'm doing this process and it's made our company more appealing. So we're actually growing our revenue because we put this in place, and maybe it's costing us a little bit more or less, but we're also increasing our sales because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Those are a little bit harder the ones that are costs are a lot easier to do. And I would say for starting an implementation, maybe focus on one that you can say, oh yeah, I've reduced my cost or I've reduced my time. And then you can look at some others that are maybe a little bit harder to evaluate, but seem to make sense.
Yeah, no different than hiring another sales guy and creating more outputs because of the sales, right?
Yes.
So same kind of thing. Well, sweet. I think that's really most of the questions I had right now. I know you've got a demo. You've kind of set up an email to show an automation. So I'll let you take that away.
Yeah. So we were talking about some options of maybe what we could do, and AI is a great option, but and I did some research just to see what could we do. My company's a little bit hesitant, I guess would be the word, to say, yeah, you can just go show our information.
Right.
And so, which makes sense because there's some private things there.
Well, it's no different than trying to sell, you got a product, you want to keep it unless it's being paid for, right? So.
Right. So I just looked at what are some options. So what if I'm a one-man show, and what could I do with as little as possible? And little in this case was, what can I do for free?
Yeah.
So
people like free.
Yeah, free's great. And so I looked at some options, and there are some workflow companies that will say, yeah, you can do AI automation in our workflow, in our environment for free. And just watch that, because that's not totally true. What they're saying is you can create the workflow for free, but as soon as you start using AI, we're going to charge you for that. So you have to look at that. And if you already have a subscription to something like Claude or OpenAI or ChatGPT, you can a lot of times plug that in. So keep that in mind as well. That's an option. But I was looking for, I don't have a subscription. I don't have anything. I'm just trying to start off. And what I came up with is most of the time you're going to get charged.
Yeah. I mean, you were telling me last night too, it's really nice to create this workflow first without AI.
Yeah.
To understand kind of what's going on inside your workflow anyways.
Yeah.
And then you can implement AI to help out with some of those more broad, it can take things that are a little bit more broad and
absolutely
for you.
So. Yeah. It's nice to have at least a foundational basic understanding of what's happening and maybe what are some options. So as you're either doing it yourself, or you're talking to a consultant, or talking to a third-party vendor, you at least have an idea of what's going on and can ask some other questions. Because again, it goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. Well, if you kind of get your hands dirty a little bit, then you have an idea. So that's kind of what I went off of. And what I ended up doing is just something straight out of a personal Gmail account. So it's not a workspace account. It's not Copilot or 365, excuse me, business account or anything like that. It's just a personal account.
So a lot of those startup businesses start out with is some kind of a personal account until they can afford to do something. So I think it's great.
So you can even do something like that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And all right. So basically what I did was just an example of some things you could do with emails to start off with. So let me show you. I had an email. These are all going to be redundant as far as who they came from. I didn't try and go from different accounts or anything like that. So they all came from me. But this is a problem email that came in. So we have a customer name that's not correct. We're having a problem with one of the customer names populating the system. So they're trying to say, we need some help with this because that's incorrect. So that's our first email. Second email is, and again, this is just for demonstration, but a payment. So say somebody sends in a payment, I have attached payment information for this invoice. This is the date and this is the amount.
I was really hoping a check number was in there, or maybe a credit card information.
No, we're trying to keep it. We're trying to keep it straightforward to start off with, and then the last one is just from a sales side. So hey, we're looking at expanding in some different areas. Really like to meet so we can discuss some of these things. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. So we'll start off with those. And I just created a script where I can put these manually. I'm going to put these into a label. But you could, of course, put a rule in place where it would automatically do that. So I'm going to label those as my, as my AI draft. So that's now down here in my AI draft. And then I'm going to go run a process. So I got some code that I have in here. And when I say that, how I did this is I came up with, this is what I want to do. And so I went to ChatGPT and I said, this is what I want to do in Gmail, make an app script, and I described what I wanted to do. Now, did it?
How big of a prompt? Let me ask you this: how big of a prompt was that? Because there's going to be somebody on there that's going to go, "Hey, I want my email to do exactly what Chris did last night, or whatever," and it's going to go, "Well, here you go," and then they're not going to get what they want. So
right. So you do have to be as specific as you can. So I told it I wanted to be able to process and look at emails that came in that wanted to have a meeting, that wanted to make a payment, that had a problem, and so and to give a response or create a draft based on those things. And you want to describe as much as you can, because even as much as I described, it didn't create it and flesh it out exactly how I wanted. So I had to go in and tweak the code. So you can do some basic things, absolutely, and you may have to get with somebody who has some technology experience, or like Ideacom, who can give you some help through help desk. And I hope I'm not promoting things that you guys don't want to do, but you can do that to say, hey, this is what I want to do. I've gotten this far, or can you help me create it?
Right.
So I did have to tweak it.
You're saying that you're not available? Shoot. Well, maybe to me, I guess.
We'll talk. So from here, I didn't know when we were going to hit this in the demo. So I have it so that I can just manually run it. But over on this left-hand side, you can create a trigger to say, every 10 minutes or whatever, go check my email, process it, and then create drafts or whatever with it. But I'm just going to manually run it. So we'll run this. Going to go through its thing, and it's done. So we're going to go back to my regular email screen. So I have my AI draft. If I refresh that, those are gone. So one of the things that I had it do as part of the process is say, once it's been processed, take it out of my email draft, and you'll see that I have 3 in this email or AI draft done. Or if it had a problem, then it would go to this AI draft error.
When you say problem, is that like because you didn't give it, let's say an email came in and it was not a payment, a meet time, or what was the other one that you had?
A problem, meet time, or scheduling.
Schedule.
Sales or schedule.
So that's when it's going to go, oh, here's an error I have.
Yeah,
it doesn't know what to do with it.
I don't know what to do with this, so I'm just going to put it in the error, and you can go look at it and do what you need to with it. So these are in the done, but also if I go up to my draft, I have 6 drafts now because apparently I didn't take care of the ones that I did before. So I apologize for that. But if you look at the timestamp, these were done at 7:04. It currently is 7:06. So 2 minutes ago when I ran this, I created those drafts, I promise. So I can go look at this and I have the let's meet, and it came in and it said, hi, thanks for reaching out. I'll take a look at scheduling events and get back to you shortly. It looks like I can contact you at, and it picked up the phone number, or at this email address, and it picked up the email address. I look forward to talking to you soon. So there's our first response. We'll do payment. So I know this is not totally realistic, but just to give you an idea of some things that can be done. So thank you for your payment. The amount of, and it found the amount, will be applied to your account for the invoice dated, and it gives the date, and we're grateful for your business. So notice we could get a little more technical if I spent some more time on it to say, hey, look for the invoice number and grab it. And that's where AI can be really helpful in some of these flows, because you can train it to go look for invoice numbers. So our process that we use for the invoices in our company, we did go through a training process with the AI to say, these invoices that we're bringing in, here's what to look for. And so we would give it samples and we'd go through those examples for a little while. And then the AI would go, okay, now I get it. This is where it's at. This is what you're looking for. So that's where AI could be helpful in a process like this to look for some of those kinds of information.
The other thing that we were kind of talking about also was like document stuff. Like manually, you can tell it where to put a document or what to do with a document.
Yes.
But AI can actually open up the document, look at the document, pull information from the document, and create another draft for you. So there are some nice things where AI does a little bit more than just the automation does.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you're doing an automation like this, you basically have to tell it everything you want to do and look for it, which is a decent way to start, because again, you can do it for little to no cost.
Right.
But then you know, or you can hit the points where you go, now I know where it would be helpful to pull in some other things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the last one, so we have a problem. So in this case, hi, thank you for contacting me so I can help. I'm also forwarding this information to our support team so we can get this resolved as soon as possible. So you could have, and I didn't do it again because of time constraints on kind of fleshing this out, but you could have this go through and say, I am either CCing or forwarding your email to our support team, and that gets the ball rolling, even if you're not actively monitoring or in a meeting and doing something else and can't get to that email at that point. So,
and I mean, how long did it take you to put all of this together? I mean,
so it took me about 2 hours to do that.
How long would you expect somebody who doesn't know, quite as much as you do, hasn't been doing it for 30 years,
Yeah. So it may take you 8 hours or 10 hours or could be longer. It just depends on how comfortable you are and maybe some experience with basic scripting or even spreadsheets, doing some things like that. It could take you a little bit longer than that, but if you can also ask ChatGPT and say, hey, walk me through this step by step and tell me what's going on. And that can give you some better ideas. So it can even help you out that way. So, but yeah, it could take a little while. And with anything new that you may be learning, you're trying, at first, it can be a little frustrating. And then you get that first breakthrough. It's like going out on the golf course and, you're duffing your ball all the time, and then all of a sudden you hit a great shot and you're like, I'm coming back.
So it takes one shot coming back after 50.
Yeah.
That are terrible. Yeah.
So, you may fail for 20 hours or, 100 times, and then you get that one that works. You're like, got it. So that can be kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's something that you can consider as far as your ROI. How much time do I want to be putting into said workflow? Because your time is just as valuable outside of the office as it is inside the office. So, what are you? I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
Go ahead. I was gonna see if you're gonna go into your
one more piece. So one other thing that I had it do is I'm gonna go over to my sheets here. So, opening up my sheets, and I told it to create a log. So I have an AI email customer information log. And if I go into that, it has logged all these emails that have come in, and it's grabbed basic information about it. You can kind of tell it what you want it to do. So here's the date, here's the name, the email address who sent it in, what the subject was. And of course, there's repetitions because I was just playing around with that. It'll give you the type of email it was. So this was a scheduling, there was a question, there's a thank you. And it tells you also the information it would capture. So the dates, the dollar amounts, the phone numbers, all those kinds of things.
I'm
So-
sure you prompted ChatGPT to also tell you all that stuff as well to get that code, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that was one of the prompts is I also want to create a log. And you can tell it what you want in the log, what you want to try and capture, how you want it formatted, so you can go report on that. So in the case of, you're capturing sales emails that are coming in, then you can start automatically building that customer reference along with, email addresses, their phone numbers, and the subjects that they're bringing up. So those kinds of things that you can do.
Is there a way to, where you've ran this a few times and it shows repetition, and if you're doing it on a trigger and timing it, is there a way, is it more code or how exactly would that work to make sure that there's not duplicates?
There'd be more code involved because you could say, and again, it depends on what you want to capture. Because if you're just trying to capture the distinct customers that are coming in, then yeah, you could have it key off of that and say, oh, if the email address is already in there, don't worry about putting it in again. But you may want to capture it to see, well, how many times and are there different subjects?
Right.
So again, depending on what you're looking for, which is why it's so important at the beginning to have a definition of what the process is and what your end goal is, so you know what you're trying to get to.
Sweet. Anything else that you have as far as this demo goes, or?
No, that was it on the demo.
Sweet. Well, just the last couple questions then. In your opinion, what is the first workflow a small business should consider?
I think an email kind of pounded that a little bit, but an email is really an easy one because
you can make mistakes and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, you can make mistakes. It's not a big deal. Everybody's using email for something.
Yeah.
And even if you start off with, you haven't done any rules in your email to automatically either put it into a different label or a different folder, depending on what kind of system you're using, or creating a draft for you. You could start off with just doing that. And I don't mean that as a just, but that's a good starting point to get your feet wet on, well, what do rules look like and what kind of processing does that look like and can I do with this? So email is just a great way to start.
What's the biggest implementation mistakes to avoid?
I would say, especially initially, trying to go too big. Start with little steps. Get comfortable. Have some successes, so that you can go, oh, I'm starting to understand the process and I'm seeing some results. And then the other big mistake is just saying, well, I'm going to wing it, and this just sounds good, so I'm going to try it. No, have a definite goal in mind. This is what I'm trying to get to. Because then at least if you can't get there initially, you can modify it and say, okay, maybe that was a little bit too much of a leap. Let me try something here. But at least you can define, have I met it? Am I there yet or not?
So small steps, chain reaction, adding things up slowly. Best case scenario, right?
Right. Because so honestly, if I'm building a huge process, and I know it's going to be a huge process, we will break it down into chunks, because if you just try and tackle all of it from the very beginning, that is overwhelming for anybody.
Yeah.
So we know we have this process, but we're just going to say, we just want to tackle this piece of it. And we start there, and then we say, okay, once we get the output of that process, and we know how that links in with everything else, and so we'll manually do it, or do it the way we always have from that point on. And then we can say, oh, now that we have that, now we can do another one. And next thing you know, you have
Your process.
a larger process that's working. Yeah.
So Legos are teaching you actually a pretty good things.
They
You've got
are.
bags, you've got, instructions. You need to follow those things to make
Absolutely.
your process. Okay.
There's a reason why Legos is successful. They have a good model.
Absolutely. What should a business measure?
They need to measure. So a few things to measure is, one, how much is being processed, how quickly is it being processed, and how many problems are you having? How many errors are you having? Those are probably the three vital ones to look at, to say, first of all, is it doing well, or is it doing better? And where are the areas that we need to look at to either fix or change so that we can reduce the errors?
And then after you get your process, then an ROI might be another measurable, right?
Yeah, and definitely an ROI would be another measure, yes.
What should listeners do the next 7 days if they want to explore this?
Get in their email and start looking at rules, and start looking at things that they repetitively do. Or if they already have rules set up, and say, okay, what can I do? What's my next step with that? To me, that would be just a good place to start.
I mean, I know you showed the back end coding spot. How would you get to something like that? I mean, yeah.
So you can just search for that and say, so the big tools that are typically out there for businesses is, you have Google and its back end piece. And then you also have, for Microsoft 365, is Power Automate. So you have the rules inside the emails, the email platforms for each of those. Power Automate would be on the Microsoft side, and Google Script would be on the Google side.
Okay. Well, anything that you feel like we didn't go over that you think is important to share with anybody?
Not that I can think of. We've covered a pretty good chunk.
Sweet. Well, when you start doing freelance, there'll probably be some people that will want your name or something, I'm sure, here soon. But
that's very nice.
I appreciate your time, and thanks for coming. I always love these discussions outside of work. It's nice that we get to share something like this with other people too. So I just appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.